That guy's gonna be some senator one day.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Jesse Hughes Show. It has been 1 week since Election Day, and yep, Bob Casey has still not conceded his loss to Dave McCormick in the Pennsylvania Senate race. But it's okay, because we are here in a beautiful Lynchburg, Virginia. We are celebrating. It's been 1 week since total victory. I hold up my chairwine glass, or can, whatever this is, in a toast to Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. 1 week ago today, we saw the greatest political comeback of all time take place. People doubted him. People thought that nobody would vote for him. You look at what happened on January 6th. You look at the numerous scandals. You look at all the indictments. You look at this. You look at that. You look at everything that's happened in the past 4 years. But none of it mattered. Donald Trump won a resounding victory, and he had the greatest political comeback of all time, taking 312 electoral votes, over 75 million votes in the popular vote. First Republican in 20 years to win the popular vote. And he took back the House. He took the Senate with him. Everything fell according to plan, and we are about to enter what I hope will be the best 4 years of American history. It's going to be epic. It's going to be great. As some may say, it's going to be huge, but it's going to be a fantastic time to be an American these next 4 years. I am very excited about what's going to happen. I don't know about you, but we have got a lot to discuss about that tonight. You look at Trump really got a mandate from the people when you think about it. The amount that he won by. He's won by over 3 million votes in the popular vote. He won the Electoral College in basically what was a landslide. He took Arizona, he flipped Nevada, he flipped Michigan, he flipped Wisconsin, he flipped Pennsylvania, he flipped Georgia. He won every single swing state. Got North Carolina. He won every single swing state, won all the states he needed to win, came within a few points in New Jersey, came within a few points in Virginia, came within a few points in places he was not supposed to even be close in. You look at the New York Times map, hard shifts to the right all over the country, and there's not a single county where Kamala Harris performed better than Joe Biden in 2020. It has been insane to witness. It's been absolutely amazing. It's crazy. But Trump has a mandate from the people. They want to see his policies enacted. And so one of the most important things is making sure that you have the personnel in place to get those policies enacted. We have seen already a few appointments that have been made, and we've seen some rumors about some appointments that are going to be made. And I just want to talk about that briefly. If you look first at some of the appointments that have been made, obviously Susie Wiles for Chief of Staff. She ran his campaign. She did a great job. She won him the race. It only makes sense that she would be Chief of Staff. I don't know particularly too much about her, but as long as she does a great job, awesome. That's great. And in Deputy Chief of Staff, his Chief Policy Advisor, we have the one and the only Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller. We are so incredibly back. We have never been this back. Stephen Miller, if you don't know much about him, total immigration hardliner. Someone who needs to be in that position. Someone who needs to advocate hardline stances on immigration to the president. Someone who's going to advocate a lot of policy positions that you and I really want to see enacted. It's going to be great. Trump has already said he's going to get rid of the Department of Education. Fantastic choice. He should get rid of the ATF while he's at it, but we'll take baby steps here and there. We will take baby steps here and there. And we look, he's got Tom Homan as the director of ICE. If you don't know who that is, he's the man in the infamous 60 Minutes clip who said, when the reporter asked him, is there any way to avoid family separation? He gave the greatest answer I've ever heard. You deport the families together. Absolutely fantastic pick. We've seen some rumors about a few other picks. Kristi Noem as DHS Secretary, Department of Homeland Security. Not as thrilled with that pick, but I believe that the president knows what he's doing. He's been taking advice from John McEntee on who to select, and it's not solidified. It's not set in stone yet. I have actually heard the president say that Kristi Noem is going to be the DHS secretary. He hasn't made a statement on it yet, to my knowledge. As of the time of this recording, he has not made a statement on it yet. So it could just be smoke. Same goes with Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. Now, I will say with Senator Rubio, I I know a lot of people are kind of weary of him. A lot of people have their reservations with him. A lot of people remember a few years ago when he ran for president against Trump, when he was kind of the neocon, the establishment candidate. He was part of the Gang of Eight, but tried to push amnesty. He was kind of weak on some of these issues, and he was very hawkish on foreign policy. Even up until a couple years ago, he was pretty hawkish on foreign policy. He advocated for aid in Ukraine, but recently it seems like he's come around. Recently, he's been taking harder stances against aid to Ukraine. Recently, he's been delivering a more populist message in many of his policies. Recently, he has seemed like he has turned a new leaf. And obviously, you want to be careful. You want to make sure that these people are properly vetted. You want to make sure that we're putting the right people in place. But Marco Rubio stood up for Trump against the January 6th witch hunt. He stood up for Trump at a lot of times when it wasn't very popular to stand up for Trump. And he's had every opportunity that he could take to stab Donald Trump in the back, and he hasn't done it. He hasn't done it. He has stayed loyal. He has stayed in lockstep with the Trump agenda. So that makes me, the Rubio thing, it's not set in stone. It's not set in stone that he's going to be Secretary of State. It's kind of still smoke at this point. We haven't heard an official statement from President Trump, and we've seen a lot of people who are close to Trump say that you should not take anything unless the president says it. So Trump hasn't made a statement on Marco Rubio. If Marco Rubio was Secretary of State, I honestly would be okay with that, just because I think that Trump would keep him on a pretty short leash. I think that he would watch his every move. And if Marco Rubio tried to do something that the president didn't like and tried to stonewall the agenda, he's out of there. He's gone. He's fired. But nothing's set in stone yet, so we will have to wait and remain and see on that. We've seen some other bubblings of some stuff. Elise Stefanik has been named as the ambassador to the United Nations. Stefanik, not the most conservative member of Congress. She has been pretty good on the Trump agenda. Honestly, as Nikki Haley kind of proved a couple years ago, if we're really being honest about this, ambassador to the UN is not the most consequential role. It's not going to have a heavy effect on policy. She's basically just there to parrot what Trump says and to enforce his agenda at the United Nations level. It's not really the most glamorous or the most consequential role in the world. So honestly, no matter who he put in place there, it would have been a decent pick. Same thing goes with ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, who honestly I think is a perfect pick for that. No matter what your stance is on Israel, on foreign policy, on whether or not we should be involved in the Middle East, once again, ambassadors, they don't do much. They don't really do much. And it's not going to have a heavy role in policy. And at the end of the day, I think it's a good thing that we're sending ambassadors to countries who are going to be friendly toward those countries, who are going to maintain good relationships. I think that is generally a good thing. Maybe every once in a while with a few different countries, maybe you want to send somebody who's going to be a little bit of a fire-breathing dragon. But Israel, again, no matter what your stance on it is, Israel has been an ally in the Middle East. There have been some historical examples of some things where they haven't acted like an ally. If you look at the USS Liberty incident and the Levant affair and a few other things like that, there have been some incidents where they haven't been, excuse me, they haven't been the strongest ally in the world. But at the end of the day, they are an ally in the Middle East. And no matter who it is, if it's Israel, the UK, Australia, no matter what, uh, maybe it's a good thing to have somebody there who's going to be friendly to the country and maintain a good relationship. We can talk about, and I do believe that we should scale back how much money we give to other countries, no matter what country it is. I do think that we should scale that back. Honestly, we should get out of NATO. Honestly, we probably should get out of the United Nations. But, we need to scale back money to everybody, in my opinion. But no matter what, I trust I'm going to trust the process for now. I'm going to see what he's doing. I'm going to see what the president has in store, in plan. I want to wait till he plays his cards to kind of get a judgment of what he's doing. So he's made some picks. There's been some rumors about some picks. Honestly, so far, pretty pleased. I haven't seen anything outright really concerning as of yet. I saw some news earlier about he did appoint a CIA secretary, and I don't know much about this guy. I don't know who he is. I don't know. I didn't have time to do much research into him before I started this show, so I'm not going to speak on him because I don't know anything about him. But if you look at his picks across the board, I think that they've been pretty solid. Kristi Noem would be a little bit weird for Department of Homeland Security if you ask me, but I'm not the president, so I cannot make those calls. The most important thing going forward, looking at, is making sure he gets good picks, but also making sure that we have leadership in Congress who is going to do a good job and not stand in the way of the agenda. Mike Johnson in the House, we've heard some rumors about there might be some conservatives who are going to try and challenge his leadership. Mike Johnson has not been perfect. Mike Johnson has made some very big mistakes the last couple of years. He's kind of been a little bit of a pushover to the Democrats. But if he's a pushover to the Democrats, he'll probably be a pushover to Trump too, if we're being honest. So I'm not heavily concerned. I don't think now is the time to really be challenging that. I think he'll enforce the Trump agenda just fine in the House. I think right now the main thing we need is unity, and if we're trying to go after the Speaker of the House, that's not going to be something that's going to instill a lot of unity in the party. Somewhere where we do need to be paying attention, though, is in the Senate leadership race. The Senate is going to be holding, Senate Republicans are going to be holding an election tomorrow to elect their majority leader. It's going to be secret ballot, which I think is wrong. If you're an elected representative, the people deserve to know what your vote is, and the people deserve to know where you stand, and the people deserve to be able to see that. It should be transparent. It should not be a secret ballot. So we've got three candidates in the Senate leadership race. You've got John Thune of South Dakota, you've got John Cornyn of Texas, and you've got Rick Scott of Florida. Of the three, the one I am most concerned about is John Thune. I do believe if he were to get in and he were to become Senate Majority Leader, I think he would do some big damage to the Trump agenda. He would do a lot of damage to what kind of policies we're trying to enforce and what our goals are. I do not believe that John Thune is the right pick whatsoever. I think that Rick Scott of Florida is of the three, the best pick. Rick Scott has kind of a complicated history. He has been a little bit weak on the gun issue when he was the governor of Florida. He's not the perfect candidate, but he is the best candidate out of the three who are running. I know a lot of people have been advocating that you choose Rand Paul or Mike Lee. As awesome as that would be, they're not running. They chose not to run. That's a pipe dream. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. They chose not to run for whatever reason, one reason or another, whatever their reasoning is. So they're not even in the running. It's not going to happen. John Cornyn of Texas. is who I think is most likely to get it. I hope he doesn't, but at the same time, I'm not overly concerned if he does. And the reason being is because if you really take a look at it, John Cornyn is kind of a pushover. He's very much so a pushover. All Trump has to do is threaten him once, he'll fall in line. I don't think he's gonna really do a ton to damage the agenda. I don't think he's going to try and stonewall anything because he is a pushover. And something interesting that came out over the weekend is that he's got some support from somebody that you really wouldn't expect. Now, official reports have said that this is public support. I have dug everywhere on the internet that I can look. I have not found where this statement was made. If you can find it, if you know where it is, please let me know. But supposedly Josh Hawley has endorsed John Cornyn for majority leader, which took me by surprise. And the reason being is because I regard Josh Hawley to be the best member of the Senate. Him and JD Vance are kind of tied for me. I love Josh Hawley. I think he's a very solid member, probably one of the most conservative, probably one of the most populist. For him to endorse John Cornyn really took me by surprise. And part of what I've heard, some theories floated, Steve Bannon believes that it's because Josh Hawley cut a deal with him where he endorses Cornyn and then Cornyn promotes a ton of Hawley's legislation, gets his name out there because Josh Hawley might be planning a run for president in 2028, which if JD Vance for one reason or another chooses not to run, I would 100% support that. I don't think that it would be a good idea to pit Josh Hawley and JD Vance against one another. I think that would do damage to both of them, and I think that would divide the party in a way that does not need to be divided. But I do like Hawley a lot, and I think he would make a fantastic president one day. A Vance Hawley ticket in 2028 would honestly be absolutely killer. That would be probably the most based administration we have ever seen in American history if that happened. But for one reason or another, Josh Hawley has supposedly endorsed Cornyn. Again, I have not been able to verify this. The media reports it as if it's some public thing. I have not seen any public statements about it. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right places. I haven't seen anything publicly, but that seems to be the state of the race. But as I said, Cornyn would be a pushover. He's not my first choice. He would do the Trump agenda because he's a pushover, but he's not my first choice. Thune would be dangerous, and he would definitely try to be as much of a stumbling block to the Trump agenda as possible. Rick Scott, I think, is the best option. And if you also believe that, the vote is supposed to be tomorrow. Senate offices, congressional offices just generally, but Senate offices open and start taking calls from constituents around 9 a.m. If you want to make your voice heard on this, and if you want to make sure that your senator is voting for the right person, and that person I believe is Rick Scott, call your senator tomorrow morning. You can't do it right now, their offices are closed. But tomorrow morning, set yourself a reminder, call your senator and tell them that you want Rick Scott to be the Senate Majority Leader. Make sure you do it. And one little note, I tweeted this the other day. When you call, be nice, be respectful, please. Because the person that's answering the phone is not the senator, it's not their chief of staff, it's usually some random intern, some college student who's there interning for a summer. Maybe they're getting paid, maybe they're not. Sometimes all they get is college credit. Be nice to the interns, please. As a former congressional intern, I can tell you I heard some of the wackiest, most outlandish, most outrageous, and sometimes even the most unconscionable things when I was an intern from people on the phone. Please be nice to the interns. Please. They are not in control of anything in the office. They're just there. And be nice to them. They have no say. They can tell the senator what you think. They can tell the senator what you said. But please be nice to the interns. Yes, if we want a Trump agenda that's going to be effective, if we want a Trump agenda that's going to be the best for the American people, we need to make sure that we get Rick Scott as the Senate Majority Leader. Now, what is that Trump agenda? What is it going to look like? Obviously, we've seen throughout the campaign he's made a number of promises. He said a number of things about what he would do once he got into office. But there are a few things that I think are the most important. I have 5 things in particular that I think are the most important for a Trump agenda, the most important things that we need to get done within the first 100 days, the most important things that we need to focus on going into year one. And the first one of those is you have to shut down the border. You have to handle the immigration crisis. And the way that you do that is obviously you shut down the border on day one, don't let in any more illegal immigrants, and you have to start your mass deportation operation as soon as you can. You have to deport every single illegal immigrant that is in this country. You have to deport every single one. I don't care if they're a grandma. I don't care if maybe they're a hardworking citizen. If your first act of coming into this country is to break its laws, I automatically do not trust you and I do not want you in this country. You have to go back. You have to go back. You are all going back. And Trump on day one needs to make sure that that is the plan and that is what's set in place and that is what we're going to get started working on. Every single one has to go back. And to push it a little further, and I do think that there is some support for this. Jim Jordan has voiced support for this. Stephen Miller has voiced support for this. There is support for this. We have to institute a temporary moratorium on all legal immigration. And I know that sounds harsh, but we have to stop not only illegal immigration, but we've got to stop legal immigration for a short period of time. Because right now, there are millions of people coming over the border illegally, but there's also millions of people coming over the border legally who many of them are probably hardworking and many of them probably want to assimilate to America. But when you look at what's going on, the immigration courts are overwhelmed. There's not enough judges. There's not enough lawyers. There's not enough infrastructure. There's not enough housing in America for all of America's citizens and for these immigrants. Many of them are not assimilating. Many of them are coming here legally, but still holding the values of their home country. They're still holding the values of their home heritage instead of assimilating to American culture, which is what they should be expected to do. We've got to put a stop on legal immigration until we can get the court systems back in line, until we can get things from being bogged down, and until we can get these people that are already here to assimilate to American culture and American values. We cannot let in another person until we know for a fact that they are going to assimilate and that we have room for them. Because quite frankly, right now, we do not have room. We are full right now. Sorry. You can't come here right now. You gotta turn around. We cannot accept anybody else. We are full. We have got to stop not only illegal immigration, but we've got to stop legal immigration for a short period of time. It's going to suck. You're going to see the biggest media psyop you've ever seen. You're going to see people arguing that, oh, look at this poor person fleeing persecution from this faraway country. They deserve to be here. They deserve to get the American dream. Maybe they do. But I think that the majority of people would agree that, as you know, while we want to open our hearts to these people and we want to help them out, we have a duty to prioritize American citizens. We have a duty to prioritize people that are already here. We have a duty to prioritize our own children, our own posterity, our own people before we start prioritizing and start doing things for people in other countries. We've got to prioritize America first. That's going to mean not letting people in for a little while. And maybe that's tough, maybe that's too tough, but that's what's got to happen. Sometimes the right decision is not the easiest decision. Sometimes the right decision is probably the toughest decision that you can make. But the right decision at this time is to halt legal immigration completely until we can get the infrastructure built up to be able to take some people in, until we can get things where it's going to be a smooth process, because right now it's not. Right now it's not. You've got millions of people in backlog who are sitting around the country waiting for their green card. We got to stop it. We've got to cut it off where it is, say we're not taking anybody else. If you've already applied, we're going to let you go through the process, but whoever the last person in line is, they are the last person for at least the next 4 or 5 years. We've got to stop it for a time because the courts are overwhelmed and the country is overwhelmed, and we cannot take in anybody else. We're full. Go home. That is so the first thing that Trump has to do on day one is stop the immigration crisis, start the mass deportations, and hopefully I don't have as much faith in this one, but hopefully halt legal immigration for a period of time. The second most important thing that Trump has to do on day one, the second thing that we've got to get done, is we've got to completely gut the federal bureaucracy. Get rid of the Department of Education. Get rid of the ATF. Get rid of all of these useless agencies. Cut down the bureaucrats. Fire people left and right. We've got to get all of these people out. We've got to shrink the size of the government. And we have got to make sure that the few people that we let stay are actually competent and are going to fulfill the agenda of the Trump administration. That is the most important thing that we can do. We have got to cut down Washington massively, big time. It needs to happen. Third, we need to start looking at the economy. And one of the things that we need to do, in my opinion, is we need to unleash energy independence. We've got to let drilling commence. We've got to start digging for natural resources again. And we've got to take all this stupid money out of these stupid wind farms that do nothing and start putting them towards something more productive. If you want sustainable energy, if you want to clean up the environment, solar. I mean, not solar. Solar is also kind of dumb. It's better than wind, but it's also nuclear. Nuclear energy. We need to be investing heavily in nuclear energy. It is safe, it is effective, it is environmentally friendly, it's better than all this other crap. Nuclear energy is the way forward. I do not know why so many people are so against nuclear energy. It is so obvious that it is the best thing that we can be using. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I have never understood it. Nuclear, please. We need nuclear energy. So we need to stop immigration, cut the federal bureaucracy, unleash energy independence. Number 4, stop these foreign wars. We gotta get a peace deal in Ukraine. There's no way that war can go forward. And you gotta get a peace deal in Israel. That war can't go forward. Ukraine specifically, you're not getting your land back. I hate to tell you. I'm sorry. But we've got to get a peace deal, and that probably means that some of your land is, unfortunately for you, going to go to Russia. And you know what? I hate it for you. I really do. I do hate it for you. But we got to stop this war. We can't let this war go on any longer. Because despite what the media says, and despite the way that the media paints this situation, if this war goes forward, if the war in Ukraine continues, you're not going to see a Ukrainian victory. You're going to see Ukraine wiped off the map because Russia is the master at waging long, slow wars of attrition that are going to grind down the resources of the country they're fighting. They're going to grind them down until there's nothing left. You've already got old men and very, very young boys fighting for the Ukrainian army. They have gone through their men like crazy. Hundreds of thousands of people have already died because of this war. And I know that they say that there's going to be no peace and no surrender and that they're going to fight this war to the end. If they fight this war to the end, it's going to be the end of their country. The only way that we're going to stop this war is some sort of peace settlement, which is going to mean, unfortunately for them, that they're going to lose some of their land. I hate it for you. I really do. I genuinely do. but I hate the killing and I hate the innocent people dying more. And if stopping the war and stopping the death means that you lose some of your land, that's a price I am willing to pay, and I hope that you would be too. And it will also be good for the United States because we won't be sending you billions of dollars anymore. But that's a side point. We gotta stop the killing. We gotta stop the fighting. It has to stop. And then the fifth thing that President Trump needs to focus on once he gets into office is reining in and hopefully destroying this radical trans agenda. And I know that he has already said that he's going to ban men and women's sports and that he's going to get rid of gender reassignment surgeries for minors. That's not enough. You've got to go full force on this one because this has been the biggest source of cultural decay in American history. Some of the libertarian minded folks among us will probably argue that if you're an adult, you can make your own decision, you can do whatever you want. If you want to, if you can't do it to a kid, but if you're an adult and you want to get a gender reassignment surgery, that's fine. That's not fine. That's not okay. I'm sorry to tell you, it's not. It is a huge cultural ill. It is destructive to our country, and it needs to stop. Wholesale, completely needs to stop. We have got to get rid of this trans agenda in the United States. It needs to end tomorrow. It needs to end today. It needed to end yesterday, but on day one, Trump needs to be taking steps to end this in the United States. These people are sick people. These people need help, but that help is not going to be gender reassignment surgery and hormone therapy. We cannot allow that. It is destructive to our country. It is a denial of the basic laws of biology. It's a denial of the creation of God in human beings. We need to stop it. Completely wholesale, need to stop it. I'm going to take a sip from my can here. Oh, my football's rolling away. We need the Trump agenda to be enacted quickly, swiftly, and effectively. So we've got a few Senate races that were very close calls, very interesting. Obviously, I opened the show making a joke about how Bob Casey. Let me double check that real quick. As of the opening of this show, he still has not conceded. It has been a week since the election. This is insane. Let's see what's going on Twitter. Bob Casey. Nope. Here we go. And Bob Casey has still not conceded the fact that he has lost to Dave McCormick. He's still not conceded. He still thinks that he has some path to victory. He doesn't. He's done. There's no path to victory for him. Bob Casey, you need to concede. Everybody else has called the race. Everybody else has conceded. You need to do the same, buddy. So we've got some big wins and some very tough losses in the Senate. Obviously, Dave McCormick winning his race, big win. We had Jim Justice win in Arizona. Arizona. We had Jim Justice win in West Virginia. That was obviously, that was kind of more obvious, but that was a big win. We had Tim Sheehy flip Montana, big win. Something that was also a little obvious. Bernie Moreno won in Ohio. Very big win for Bernie Moreno. But then we also took some tough losses. Eric Holtby in Wisconsin, tough loss. And there are some questions. There are some questions being raised about the legitimacy of that election. I'll let you come to your own conclusions. I'll let you look into the evidence on your own, but there are some questions. Some questions being raised. And then you had Mike Rogers in Michigan. Unfortunately, another loss. We had Kerry Lake in Arizona, a loss, which, if I'm being honest, I saw coming from a mile away. I will be honest. I will admit she did a lot better than I was expecting. She almost pulled that thing off. And there's some questions in that one too. I'll let you come to your own conclusions. I don't think Kerry Lake is a fantastic candidate. I don't think that she should run for anything ever again, if I'm being honest. But Tough loss in Arizona, and then Sam Brown in Nevada, also a very tough loss. Um, One I also was a little more inclined to believe that he would lose that race. I think Sam Brown is a fantastic candidate, a fantastic man of God, a fantastic person. I hate to say it, I do think optics played a little bit into that, and it's not his fault at all, but I do think optics play a little bit into it, if I'm being honest. But aside from a few of those losses, it's been a fantastic election cycle. I think that there are still a few House races that have not been called, which is insane to me. It's a week. It's been a week. Count the votes, call the races. It has been a week. We have got to figure out what is going on in our country with these elections. I do not know. Why is it taking a week to count votes? Why is it taking a week to figure out who won a race? Why? Why is this taking so long? Florida had it done in a couple hours. They were called early in the night. They were called early in the night. They had it done in a couple hours. Several other states had it done in a couple of hours. Even some highly contentious races had it called in a couple of hours, had it done, had it over with. Why is it taking so long? We need massive, massive election reform in this country. We've got to stop with this election season nonsense. Election day shouldn't last 40 days and then take a week to count the votes. It should not be taking this long. This is ridiculous. This is nonsense. Why is it taking forever to figure this stuff out? Get the votes counted, people. You can do it. Other states are doing it. Other states are doing it just fine. Why is it taking you so long to figure out how to count these votes? We got to get it done. We got to get it fixed. We got to get this done. We've got to get this fixed in the next 4 years. And I hate the idea of the federal government getting involved in much of anything, but there is some room constitutionally for the federal government to be able to pass some election reforms and some suggestions for the states. Mostly, I do think this should be a state-led effort. The states are who set rules for elections. I think this should be a state-led effort, but there are some states that are not going to do the things that need to be done. And so there is some room for maybe a federal requirement for voter ID. I don't think that's a huge ask. I think that's something that should happen. Voter ID, you need an ID to get onto an airplane. You need an ID to buy certain things. You need an ID to be able to get a car, to rent a car, to go into a hotel room, to do so many things. There are some instances you need an ID to go into a movie theater. There are multiple things in life that you need an ID for. One of the most important one of those things is voting. We need to make sure that we have voter ID. It is incredibly important. It is critical. It is something that we need to get done. I'm pulling something up real quick. We need to get this stuff done. We need to get it done fast. All right. Moving on. We saw some very interesting trends come out of this election. We saw Trump win young men by a lot. He shifted young men to the right a lot. He made some gains with young women. He made some gains with women overall. Trump won a lot of groups and made some gains in a lot of groups that he was not expected to. But there is one group that has been a consistently reliable voting bloc for Republicans that their influence is starting to slip away, and that is a very bad thing. And that group, of course, I'm talking about is Christians. Before the election, it was estimated that over 41 million evangelical Christians were not planning to vote. That is asinine. That is insane. And Christians are wondering why we're losing influence in the culture when 41 million of them are not willing to go and vote. And I will admit, part of that is kind of on the Republican Party. You take abortion out of the Republican Party platform. You take gay marriage, the stance against gay marriage out of the Republican Party platform. You're going to turn some people away. But at the same time, Christians cannot refuse to vote in elections, and then expect to have any influence whatsoever in any policy discussions in the country. You can't do it. You can't do it. We need Christians to go out and vote. We need Christians to be able to vote and to be able to have influence and voice in this country. And part of that is going to be mobilizing them to go out and vote. And there are some very good organizations out there. Turning Point USA has been doing a ton of work to mobilize voters. The Faith and Freedom Coalition is a group that is very good at trying to get Christians to pay attention to cultural issues and to vote. The Standing for Freedom Center at Liberty University, very good about getting Liberty students mobilized to vote. And we saw a ton of Liberty students vote this election cycle. But there needs to be an organization, and there needs to be a group, and there needs to be somebody out there whose sole focus is to get Christians off their couches and into the ballot box and voting. Get them registered, get them there on election day, get them to vote early, whatever it is. We need to get somebody to get Christians out to vote. We need a new moral majority in this country. If you don't know what the moral majority is, in the late 1970s, early 1980s, Jerry Falwell Sr., the founder of Liberty University, one of my personal heroes, great man who did a lot of great work, started the moral majority to get Christians engaged in the political process and to get them registered to vote and to get them to vote not only on federal level and on federal issues, but on local stuff as well. And, you know, Jerry Falwell is where the term religious right comes from. It's where a lot of these ideas come from. And I wrote an article a few months ago for a outlet called American Reformer, talking about how we need to implement the moral majority playbook in modern American politics. Because at that time, we saw something similar in the 1970s where Christians were kind of sitting in the background. They weren't doing anything electorally. They weren't voting. They weren't running for office. They weren't doing much of anything. And then Jerry Falwell came on the scene. And there are four main points. And four main aspects of the moral majority playbook that I think that we need to bring back. Again, I wrote this article a few months ago, but I think it's important that we bring it up again. The first thing is the importance of vision. The most important part of building an organization is casting a vision that people can follow. A lack of vision signals a lack of leadership. Luckily for the moral majority, Jerry Falwell was a visionary. I have the immense privilege of attending Liberty University School of Law now. It's the academic institution that was started by Dr. Falwell in 1971. Everyone you talked to on campus who was alive, who knew Dr. Falwell, talked at length about his ability to be able to cast a vision. Where others saw a field in some mud, Falwell saw academic buildings and sports facilities. He spoke about a football team that could rival Notre Dame and Brigham Young. He wanted Liberty to be the evangelical version of what Notre Dame was for Catholics and what BYU was for Mormons. And part of that dream has been fulfilled in 2022. Liberty scored a 41-14 victory over BYU on the football field. I was there for that, rushed the field, amazing experience. His wife, Maisel, even remarked how he seemed to know just about when he would go home to be with the Lord. When he died, he knew it was close to the end for him. Falwell was all about vision, and that was not only applied to Liberty University, but to the moral majority as well. The moral majority had a clear vision for the future of the United States, outlined in part in Falwell's 1980 book, Listen, America, a book that if you read, a lot of parallels to modern society, a lot of things that we can take from that. The group was committed to restoring traditional family values, including a national ban on pornography, a national ban on abortion, and opposition to state recognition or acceptance of homosexuality. The group also focused heavily on educational issues, including Christian prayer in public schools and support for school choice, issues that we are still talking about today. Additionally, the group supported the idea of tax incentives for married couples as a way to protect the traditional family structure, a policy point that has made a modern resurgence. While the problems and policies of the 1980s are largely different, there are still spots of overlap and a foundation to build on. The moral majority presented the vision of a uniquely, unequivocally Christian nation in the United States. It presented a vision of hope and optimism for the country rooted in Christian ideas and morals, something we should still be talking about and we should still be pursuing. We can and should learn from this and build off the foundations that have been set. The modern conservative movement has largely failed to cast a vision rooted in traditional biblical morality to the American people. It has failed to cast much of a vision of the all. If you look at the modern Republican Party, we do not have a vision that we can go off of. We do not have something that we can present to the American people. Trump did a really good job of presenting this idea of hope and optimism to the American people for his campaign, but we need something more. We need something greater that we can build off of. Another point that I brought up in this article was the importance of media. One thing Jerry Falwell understood very well was using the media of his day, namely radio and television, to reach a broad audience. Starting in 1956, Falwell would broadcast the Old Time Gospel Hour, a radio program from Thomas Road Baptist Church, into the homes of millions of people. Throughout the history of the program, it would raise an average of $30 million a year while costing only $9 million a year to operate. During the height of Falwell's influence, it raised nearly $94 million in a year period. Falwell was able to buy airtime on multiple stations and use his connections and reputation to gain distribution across the country. He knew how to use the media of his day. These numbers are largely unheard of for a lot of modern conservative organizations. Some exceptions, look at Elon Musk's New America PAC. Look at Turning Point USA. Look at a handful of organizations. But for the most part, this is unheard of. Today, we have to learn how to be proficient in the media of our day. The explosive popularity of TikTok, for better or for worse, has led to the dominance of short-form content. Short clips ranging from 30 seconds to 2 minutes long are the most popular form of content found on the internet today. Another popular form of media today is podcast, which if you look at how President Trump ran his election, he went on Joe Rogan, he went on the Nelk Boys, he went on all these podcasts and went on and had JD Vance go on all these podcasts. That helped him win. That got him to the place where he was able to strike and win, because podcasts are incredibly important. You're watching a podcast right now. You know how it is. You know how important these things are. You know how much people pay attention to these things. All 129 of you. I think that's a record. 130 now. I think that is a record. Thank you, guys. But podcast, much longer form of content, often well over an hour in length. I don't know if we're going to hit that tonight, but that's how it usually is. They provide an excellent source of shorter clips that can be used to make shorts, reels, and TikToks. We need to learn how to produce quality content and how to manipulate social media algorithms to get greater reach. It seems like we're doing a good job of that right now. We need to get better at it. We cannot just settle for good. We need to be pursuing excellence in everything that we do. Outlets like X, TikTok, and Instagram as sources of news and current events. They're used as sources of news and current events. Social media is a battlefield where we will be able to set and advance narratives that will ultimately advance our cause. It is crucial to know how to use new media. But we also must be able to use old media effectively as well, because there's still a lot of people who are used to old traditional media. It's starting to die out. We need to keep a grip on it while we can, but we also need to be investing heavily into new media, podcast, Instagram shorts, TikToks, reels, all the things. We need to be investing heavily in that. Third, the importance of organization. One of the largest strengths of the moral majority was its effective organizational structure. It was made up of 4 organizations focused on 4 different aspects of operation. Moral Majority Incorporated focused on lobbying at the state, local, and federal levels. The Moral Majority Foundation was the educational front, focused on educating pastors, ministers, and laymen on political issues and voter registration. The Moral Majority Legal Defense Fund represented the group's interest in court, mainly being used to challenge the ACLU and other liberal organizations. Finally, the Moral Majority Political Action Committee endorsed and promoted candidates whose platforms reflected the values and missions of the moral majority. The organization's foundation rested upon state chapters that worked locally to achieve the organization's goals. This, combined with the use of media, journal publications, and direct mail campaigns, led to the organization's rapid growth, with it reaching 18 states in just 1 year. The national organization, headquartered in Lynchburg, Virginia, where I'm currently located, maintained frequent communication with its state organizations and constituents. The group would often take strong stances on social issues, notably supporting North Carolina Senator Jesse Helms in his attempted efforts to pass a bill on prayer in schools. They also suggested Senator Helms as their pick for Ronald Reagan's vice president. While this attempt was unsuccessful, they were able to get one of their own in the administration, with Reverend Robert Billings being appointed as the first as a religious advisor and later to a position in the Department of Education. Having strong connection to the grassroots is quintessential to running an effective political organization. Now, this was written in March, so the RNC has improved, but for an example of what not to do, look no further than the Republican National Convention in its former state. The RNC's level of communication with the grassroots has been sloppy at best. This is kind of still the case. Many local and state organizations have felt ignored by the national organization that is supposed to represent them. This is also kind of still the case. Combine this with the RNC's record of loss in 2020 and a pitiful showing in the 2022 midterms, and you have an organization that is deposed by its grassroots constituency. Very, very tough. While the RNC serves as the gold standard of what not to do, the moral majority serves as a gold standard of what to do, at least at a base level. Establish a central national organization with semi-autonomous state chapters. Use existing church networks and media apparatuses to build a coalition. Fundraise and recruit aggressively. Make sure that you have all your bases covered, from the lobbying arm, the political activism, the legal side, and educational front. Having these things in order will help lay the foundation for a highly successful political operation. You also need to ensure that this organization is staffed by the best people you can find who are loyal to the cause and skilled in what they do. We need excellent people. Once you have people to lead, then you can start leading people. And finally, the last aspect and importance of mobilization. As mentioned earlier, the moral majority at one point boasted a membership of up to 4 million people. Many of these were everyday laymen inspired by a vision of a better America. Once they were educated on the issues and equipped to act, they were mobilized. The moral majority, through its network of churches across the country, registered millions of Americans to vote in their elections and made sure that once they were registered, they went out and voted. We on the Christian right need to employ and build upon a similar operation today. Some of these ideas are a little controversial to some people, but they need to be done. We need to build a network of churches across the country that will commit to educating their congregations on the issues of the day and registering their congregates to vote. This is not all. We must also equip and empower local churches to take greater initiatives politically in their communities. Where it is legal, have churches induct massive ballot harvesting initiatives in their local communities. They must have volunteers who are willing to participate in voter registration drives, in poll watching, and in other election activities. This is not something that necessarily needs to be done on a Sunday morning in the pulpit, but the churches, you don't have to have your pastor saying you need to get out there and vote on Sunday morning, though I think they should. But you can have churches holding events throughout the week about voter registration, about the importance of the issues, about what's going on at the local level. We need to get churches organized, and we need to get them out there and fighting and get them to be able to hold influence in this country. America is a Christian nation. It was founded as one. The Supreme Court has ruled that. If we want to keep it a Christian nation, if we want to fight back against the influence of secularism, if you want to fight back against the leftists who are ruining this country, we need to get Christians involved in every way that we possibly can. That is the only way forward. That is the only way we're going to win. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining. I hope you have enjoyed. If you're watching, I I am a law student who does not have a job, and it takes a lot because I'm in law school. I don't have a job; they won't let me. And it takes a lot of resources and time and energy to put into this. Please consider donating to the show. My Venmo, you can see it below. It's at jhughes4031. If you feel so called, if you feel so led, I am asking for your money. um, please consider donating to the show. It would mean a lot. But just your support and just the fact that you're willing to sit down and watch me and listen to me for an hour means a ton. Thank you guys. I really do appreciate it. You guys are the best. God loves you and so do I. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good night and God bless.